The luminous spiral, that grand swirl of civilized space encompassing roughly 3,000 inhabited systems, had developed over its 12,000 years of recorded history a rather refined approach to violence. Which is to say, they had made it boring. Oh, they called it martial arts. They called it the way of honorable combat. They called it physical philosophy and the dance of conflict resolution. What they had actually created was the galactic equivalent of watching paint dry while the paint pontificated about the nature of adhesion. Dravek, of the Zekarothian ascendancy, understood this better than most, primarily because he had spent the last 150 years being very, very good at it, and consequently very, very bored. His species had evolved on Zekrothal, a moon orbiting a gas giant in a system so stable it made metronomes look chaotic. Low gravity, mild temperatures, and an ecosystem where the apex predator was a herbivore that occasionally got anxiety about eating too many plants. The Zekarothians had developed their six-limbed bodies and chitinous armor not through evolutionary pressure, but through sheer biological whimsy. Nature on their world had been less survival of the fittest and more survival of whoever showed up. Consequently, when the Zekrothians developed combat sports, they approached it the way a species does when fighting has never actually been necessary for survival. They made it ceremonial, philosophical, elaborate. A proper Zekarothian combat match could last 6 hours. There were opening ceremonies that took 40 minutes, ritualized challenges that required both fighters to recite poetry about the nature of conflict, specific stances that had to be held for prescribed durations, while opponents assessed each other's philosophical commitment to the fight. Dravek had mastered all of it. Every stance, every ritual, every philosophical counterargument embedded in physical movement. He had fought opponents from 17 different species across 8 star systems. His record was unblemished, his technique flawless, his understanding of combat as art unparalleled. He wanted to throw himself into a star. "You cannot retire," Tillix chittered, his crystalline body refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme anxiety. Tillix was Dravek's promoter, a Quillan whose species communicated partially through color shifts in their transparent bodies. Currently, he was cycling through shades that suggested impending cardiac failure. "You are at the peak of your career. The Zenith tournament is in 3 months. The prize purse is 40 million credits. The prize purse could be 40 billion credits, and I would still rather eat my own molted armor than fight another opponent who spends 2 hours explaining their philosophical justification for a leg sweep." Dravek reclined on his meditation platform, all 6 limbs sprawled in a posture that would have horrified his combat trainers. "They are all the same, Tillix. Same rituals, same techniques, same predictable progressions. I can tell you how every fight will end before it begins. That is because you are the greatest fighter in 8 systems. That is because everyone fights the same way. There is no variation, no unpredictability, no actual challenge." Dravek's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Do you know what I did in my last match? I spent the first hour composing a shopping list in my head. I did not even need to pay attention until the 3rd hour. You won in 4 hours, record time. It should not have taken 4 hours. The opponent telegraphed every move. I could have ended it in the first exchange if the rules did not require me to demonstrate appropriate philosophical engagement." Tillix's crystalline structure shifted to a nauseous green. "You are talking about efficient combat. That is not the point. The point is the art, the philosophy, the tedium." "Yes, I am aware." Dravek sat up, his armor plates shifting with a sound like wind chimes made of knives. "I am going to retire, Tillix. I will fight out my contract for the Zenith tournament, collect my credits, and then I am done. Perhaps I will take up pottery, At least pottery does not require me to spend 6 hours pretending to find meaning in hitting someone. That conversation had occurred 3 weeks ago. Then the news broke, and everything changed. The galactic community, that sprawling bureaucracy of species who had agreed to mostly not kill each other in exchange for trade benefits and shared technology, had just admitted a new member species. This happened every few decades, when some upstart civilization developed faster-than-light travel and proved they could operate spacecraft without immediately crashing into things. What made this admission notable was the planet of origin. Earth. Class designation, 12. Tillix had burst into Dravek's residence at what passed for dawn on their current station, his body flashing colors that did not exist in standard perception. Have you seen the news? The new species? Their planet classification? I do not watch news. It is depressing. Their planet is a Class 12 Deathworld. That got Dravek's attention. The galactic classification system for planets ranged from Class 1, paradise worlds where evolution was a pleasant suggestion, to Class 15, planets that were essentially trying to achieve sentience specifically to kill things better. Most spacefaring species emerged from Class 3 to Class 6 worlds. Class 12 was the kind of rating that made insurance companies refuse coverage. How does a species achieve spaceflight from a Class 12? Dravek pulled up the data feed on his wall display. The information scrolled past, and with each line, Dravek's mandibles spread wider in disbelief. Planet Earth. Gravity, 1.2 times galactic standard. Atmospheric composition, 21% oxygen, dangerously high, prone to combustion. Weather systems, violently unstable, capable of wind. Velocities exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Seismic activity, frequent, unpredictable, catastrophic. Volcanic activity, ongoing, widespread, occasionally apocalyptic. And that was just the geology. The biology section made the geology look benign. Apex predators, multiple in every environmental niche. Predators on land that hunted in coordinated packs using tactical communication. Predators in the ocean that could detect electromagnetic fields and had existed mostly unchanged for 400 million years because they had achieved evolutionary perfection. Predators in the air with visual acuity that could spot small prey from 3 kilometers away. Their plants are toxic, Dravek read aloud. 73% of plant species contain compounds harmful to humans. Many are lethal. Keep reading, Tillix said, his colors now a fascinating shade of horrified purple. Dravek scrolled further. Their star emits radiation that causes cellular damage. They had to evolve melanin production and DNA repair mechanisms just to survive sunlight. He paused. They created recreational activities around sun exposure. They call it tanning. They are insane. They are fascinating. Dravek pulled up video footage from the human delegation's arrival at the Galactic Assembly headquarters. A dozen humans, displaying the remarkable physical variation that characterized their species. Different sizes, colors, configurations. All of them moving with a casual alertness that suggested constant environmental awareness. They looked soft. No natural armor, no claws, no obvious weapons. Just bipedal mammals with forward-facing eyes and opposable thumbs. They do not look dangerous, Tillix observed. They look like prey species. Read the rest of the file. Dravek did, and discovered that humans were persistence predators. They could run for hours, tracking prey across vast distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They had evolved throwing accuracy that allowed them to strike targets at range with devastating force. Their sweat-based cooling system meant they could operate in conditions that would kill most other species. And they had evolved all of this while simultaneously being prey for multiple other species. They were both predator and prey, Dravek murmured, simultaneously. Is that even possible? Apparently. Dravek found the section on human combat sports and felt his interest spike for the first time in decades. The footage was shocking. Humans fought each other for sport, but their version of sport looked like attempted murder. Boxing, where they struck each other repeatedly in the head until one lost consciousness. Wrestling, where they attempted to break each other's joints. Mixed martial arts, where they combined striking and grappling into a chaotic violence that lasted minutes, not hours. Minutes. Some fights ended in seconds. There was no ceremony, no philosophical preamble. The fighters touched hands, a referee signaled start, and they immediately tried to incapacitate each other with brutal efficiency. It was the most beautiful thing Dravek had ever seen. "I am going to fight one," he announced. Tilix's colors went through several shades not previously documented by science. "You are going to what?" "Fight a human, for exhibition, cultural exchange." Dravek was already composing the challenge in his head. "They are from a Deathworld. They fight for survival, not philosophy. This will be interesting. This will be suicide. I am 4 times their average mass. I have natural armor. I have been undefeated for 150 years. Against species who follow rules and philosophy, these creatures evolved dodging predators and weather. Exactly. Finally, an unpredictable opponent." Dravek's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement in his species. "Contact the human embassy. Issue a formal challenge for an exhibition match. Make it public. This will be the most interesting fight of my career." Tilix made a sound like a glass harmonica being murdered. "You are going to get hurt. Perhaps. But I will not be bored." The challenge went public 3 days later. Dravek, undefeated champion across 8-star systems, formally invited any human fighter to an exhibition match. Cultural exchange, testing of techniques, mutual respect between species. The galactic media went absolutely feral. This was unprecedented. Cross-species combat matches were rare, usually carefully controlled events between species of similar size and capability. A Zekarothian challenging a human was like a heavyweight boxer challenging a featherweight if the featherweight had evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill everything. The human embassy's initial response was diplomatic and cautious. They appreciated the offer. They were honored by the interest. They were also deeply concerned about liability and the potential for serious injury. They also mentioned that humans possessed certain physical adaptations that might make such a match inadvisable. Higher bone density, more efficient oxygen processing, pain tolerance that other species found disturbing, a biochemical stress response that could make them continue fighting through injuries that would incapacitate most species. Dravek signed 17 different liability waivers and asked again. The humans consulted among themselves. Then they asked if any humans were actually interested in fighting an alien 6 times their size with natural armor. 47 humans volunteered in the first hour. The embassy narrowed it down to candidates with combat experience. Then narrowed it further to candidates currently in the galactic community on work visas. Then narrowed it to candidates who would not cause diplomatic incidents if they accidentally killed Dravek. They selected Jenna Park. Age, 28 standard years. Occupation, construction worker. Currently employed in habitat expansion on Station Tertius 9. Previous occupation, military service, infantry division, 8 years. Combat experience, military hand-to-hand training, recreational mixed martial arts, one amateur boxing match that ended in a knockout in the second round. Height, 168 centimeters. Mass, 71 kilograms. Physical condition, excellent. Reason for volunteering, according to her application. Sounds fun. I like trying new things. Tillix looked at her file, and his colors relaxed to a cautiously optimistic yellow. She is not a professional fighter. This is better than I feared. Dravek studied her photograph. Dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Brown eyes that held the same constant alertness he had noticed in all humans. A slight smile that suggested she found something amusing about this entire situation. She volunteered to fight someone 6 times her size for entertainment. Dravek said slowly. What does that tell you? That she is an idiot? That she is confident. And humans do not survive Deathworlds by being overconfident. They survive by accurately assessing threats. You think she actually believes she can win? I think she knows something we do not. The fight was scheduled for 3 months out, giving both participants time to prepare and the promoters time to transform it into the media event of the decade. The betting pools opened within hours. The odds heavily favored Dravek. He had mass, reach, armor, and experience advantages. He was a master of combat arts with 150 years of undefeated matches. Jenna Park worked in construction and had fought recreationally in college. Dravek prepared by studying every piece of human combat footage he could acquire. He watched boxing matches where humans struck each other with their closed fists hundreds of times in 3-minute rounds. He watched mixed martial arts where they transitioned between striking and grappling with fluid brutality. He watched wrestling where they used leverage and body mechanics to throw opponents twice their size. What struck him was the speed, not the speed of movement, though humans moved faster than most species their size. The speed of decision-making. Human fights progressed in seconds, not minutes. They did not contemplate their next move. They did not pause to consider philosophical implications. They saw an opening and exploited it immediately. Their entire combat methodology was based on ending threats as rapidly as possible. It made sense for a prey species that had to fight predators. You did not have time to philosophize when a pack of wolves was attacking. You hit fast, hit hard, and made the threat stop. But it was so alien to everything Dravek had learned that he found himself struggling to adapt. His training team was less concerned. She has no armor. Her bones are relatively fragile. Her reach is limited. You need only land one solid strike and the match is over. Assuming I can land a strike. You are 4 times her mass. Even if she is fast, you have reach advantage. Dravek was not as confident. He had watched footage of human fighters. They did not fight in straight lines. They circled, feinted, created angles. They made themselves difficult targets while simultaneously closing distance. Meanwhile, according to updates from the human embassy, Jenna Park's preparation consisted of her normal workout routine, plus some extra cardio, and watching a few old fights to remember the basics. She was not drilling Zekarothian anatomy. She was not studying his fight footage. She went to work, lifted construction materials, went to the gym, and apparently spent her evenings watching entertainment videos. She is not taking this seriously, Tillix observed 3 weeks before the fight. Or she does not think she needs to prepare. Dravek watched another video of Jenna's daily routine, provided by the embassy for promotional purposes. She moved through her construction work with efficient economy, lifting materials that massed half what she did, maneuvering in tight spaces with casual competence. She looked completely comfortable in her body. No wasted movement. No hesitation. She looked, Dravek realized, like someone who had spent their entire life in an environment that punished inefficiency. Fight night arrived with a fanfare usually reserved for planetary elections. The venue was the Zenith Arena on Station Tertius 9, a facility designed to host combat sports with full safety measures. Medical teams from a dozen species stood ready. Force fields could be deployed in microseconds to separate fighters if things went wrong. The arena floor was set to galactic standard gravity as a neutral compromise. 80,000 beings filled the seats. Viewership across the galactic network was estimated at 23 billion. Dravek entered first, as was traditional for the higher-ranked fighter. He performed the ceremonial walk, acknowledging the crowd with appropriate gestures. His armor had been polished to a mirror shine. His 6 limbs moved in the prescribed patterns of the opening ritual. The crowd responded with appropriate appreciation. This was how things were done. Then Jenna Park walked into the arena, wearing black athletic shorts, a gray tank top, and shoes that looked designed for running. She was drinking from a water bottle. She waved at the crowd like she was greeting friends at a casual gathering. The crowd's roar was different. Not the respectful appreciation for ceremony, but genuine excitement at the novelty. A human, a Deathworlder, in an actual combat match. The referee, a neutral species with excellent reaction time and no emotional investment in the outcome, brought both fighters to the center. The space was 50 meters in diameter, marked with a circle of light. No obstacles. Pure test of skill. Standard rules apply, the referee announced in the lingua franca of Galactic Standard. Fight continues until incapacitation, submission, or referee intervention for safety. Medical teams standing by. Are both fighters ready? Dravek bowed formally, sweeping his forward limbs in the traditional gesture of respect. He assumed his opening stance, weight distributed across 4 limbs, 2 limbs raised for initial engagement. His combat computer, the neural enhancement that had helped him analyze opponents for 150 years, activated with a soft chime only he could hear. Jenna bounced on her toes twice, rolled her shoulders, shook out her arms. Yeah, let's go. The bell chimed. Dravek began the traditional opening, raising his primary manipulator limbs in the gesture of respect that preceded all formal combat. I honor your courage in... Jenna crossed the distance between them in 1.3 seconds. Dravek's combat computer registered movement, began calculating trajectory, started to formulate a defensive response. Her first strike was a low kick that impacted his right rear support limb at the joint. The impact sent a shock wave through his chitinous structure. His weight distribution shifted. Her second strike was a straight punch that hit the center of his thorax where his armor plates met. The force translated directly into his internal structure. Something cracked. Her third strike was a knee that came up as he bent forward from the punch, catching him in his sensory cluster with enough force to make his vision flash white. Total time elapsed. 2.1 seconds. Dravek stumbled backward, his combat computer still trying to process the first strike, while the third was already landing. His armor had distributed some of the impact, but kinetic force was kinetic force. Chitin that had evolved to deflect energy weapons and slashing attacks did nothing against blunt trauma delivered with human mass and acceleration. Instinct took over. He tried to reset to defensive stance, raising his guard limbs. Jenna did not pause. She was already moving, circling to his damaged side. Another low kick, a punch to the same thorax point, a palm strike to his sensory cluster that made his equilibrium sensors scream. 3.8 seconds total. His rear limb collapsed. He went down on 3 limbs, trying to regain stability. Jenna transitioned to ground fighting without hesitation, her entire body weight driving into him, limbs wrapping around his structure in a pattern his combat computer had no reference for. She was controlling his limbs, preventing him from establishing base. His species did not grapple. It was considered undignified. Proper combat happened standing, with appropriate distance for technique. Jenna apparently had not read that particular philosophical treatise. She secured a position on his back, one arm wrapped around his neck ridge, her legs hooked under his middle limbs. Pressure increased. His breathing passages constricted. 5.4 seconds total. Dravek's higher cognitive functions finally caught up with what was happening. He was losing. Badly. Immediately. To an opponent 1/6 his mass, who had covered 50 meters and taken him apart before he had finished his opening greeting. He tapped his free limb against the ground 3 times. Universal submission signal. The pressure released immediately. Jenna rolled off him, bounced to her feet, walked a few steps away with her hands on her hips, breathing hard but not exhausted. Total fight time, 6.2 seconds. The arena was silent for approximately 4 seconds before erupting into absolute chaos. Dravek lay on the arena floor, his armor cracked, his breathing labored, his pride shattered into fragments smaller than subatomic particles. Medical teams swarmed the arena. Gentle manipulators checked his structure, scanning for serious damage. Nothing critical. Cracked plates, bruised internal structures, wounded ego that would take significantly longer to heal. In the stands, Tillix had fainted. His crystalline body was being attended to by concerned spectators. The replay footage appeared on the arena screens. Even in slow motion, slowed to 1/10 of real time, Jenna's movements were difficult to track. Strike, move, no pauses, no hesitation. She had entered his guard before his combat computer had processed that she was moving. The announcers were struggling. I have never seen... Did that actually happen? Can we see that again? They showed it again and again, from 6 different angles, in ultra-slow motion, with computer analysis overlays. Every angle showed the same thing. A master fighter with 150 years of experience taken apart in 6 seconds by a construction worker who fought as a hobby. Dravek was helped to the medical bay, his limbs unsteady, his mind reeling. The fight had not just been fast. It had not just been efficient. It had been a complete mismatch of philosophies. He had been preparing for a fight. Jenna had been ending a threat. The difference was everything. In the medical bay, he requested the fight footage again, watched it in the slowest possible motion, analyzed every movement. The kick had targeted his joint structure, the weakest point in his limb architecture. The punch had hit exactly where his plates met, transferring force directly to internal structure. The knee had struck his sensory cluster, which in his species was poorly protected because on Zekrothal, nothing had ever tried to hit them there. She had identified his structural weaknesses in the walkout, probably from watching him move, and exploited them immediately. How are you feeling? The medical technician, a kind-eyed Quillen, checked his readings. Humiliated. You took strikes from a Deathworlder. You are lucky to be alive. She pulled her strikes. I could tell. She could have hit harder. You think she was holding back? I think if she had not been, I would be in surgery rebuilding my thorax. A chime at the door. Jenna Park entered, still in her fight clothes, carrying 2 bottles of some earth beverage. Hey, you okay? I wasn't trying to hurt you badly. Dravek stared at her. That was you not trying? Well, I was trying to win, but I wasn't trying to, break you. She offered one of the bottles. Sports drink, helps with recovery. Tastes terrible, but the electrolytes are good. He took it with a manipulator limb, studied the label written in human script, and took a cautious sip. She was right. It tasted like someone had dissolved minerals in sadness. You destroyed me in 6 seconds. Yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to end it fast. Figured a long fight would be worse for you. Better to end it clean. That was clean? No broken bones, no permanent damage. You're conscious and talking. That's pretty clean. Dravek's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. I want to ask you a question. Sure. How do you train for such speed? Jenna sat down in a chair designed for a different species, looking comfortable anyway. You don't really train for speed specifically. You train assuming everything is trying to kill you and speed comes naturally. When I did military hand-to-hand training, they drilled us on threat assessment and immediate response. See threat, end threat, move to next threat. No time to think, just react. But this was not a threat. This was a sport match. Yeah, but my brain doesn't really differentiate. Fight is fight. You either win or you don't. Doesn't matter if it's sport or survival, the mechanics are the same. Your entire combat philosophy is about ending fights immediately. Well, yeah. Why would you want a fight to last longer than necessary? Every second a fight continues is another chance to get hurt. She paused. How long do your fights usually last? 4 to 6 hours on average. Jenna's expression suggested she thought he was joking. Hours? Like multiple hours? Yes, with proper ceremony, philosophical exchange, tactical positioning. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. That's not fighting. That's performance art with violence flavoring. She leaned forward. Where I come from, fights that last hours mean somebody doesn't actually want to win. In a real fight, on Earth, against an actual threat, if you take hours, you die. The predator kills you. The weather kills you. The other human kills you. Whatever. You die. So we evolved to end fights fast. But what about honor? Tradition. The philosophical meaning of combat. We have that. We just do it after the fight is over. During the fight, philosophy just gets you killed. She took a drink from her bottle. Look, I get that your species has a different approach. That's fine. But you asked me what a real fight looked like. That was a real fight, Earth style. We hit first, hit hard, and end it before it ends us. Dravek absorbed this. His entire martial philosophy, 150 years of study and practice, had been based on the assumption that combat was an art form, a way to explore the nature of conflict through physical expression. Jenna Park had just demonstrated that combat could also be a tool, a very efficient, very brutal tool for solving problems that involved other beings trying to hurt you. Would you be willing to teach me? He asked. Teach you to fight like a human? Yes. Okay. But fair warning. Human training is basically controlled suffering. We train until our bodies break down, then rest until they heal stronger. Then we do it again. It's not fun. I have been bored for 150 years. Fun is overrated. Jenna grinned. All right. First lesson. Forget everything you know about honor in combat. Honor is what you have after you win. During the fight, all that matters is ending it. The interview footage went viral across the Galactic Network within hours. A reporter from the Galactic Sports Federation had caught Jenna leaving the arena. What was your strategy going into the fight? Hit him before he hit me. That's it? That's how fighting works. You hit the other person until they stop being a problem. But Dravek is a master of Zekrothian combat philosophy with 150 years of experience. That's great. Philosophy doesn't help if you get punched in the face before you can think about it. Some viewers are saying your approach lacks honor and artistry. Some viewers didn't grow up on a planet where the weather can kill you. Honor is a luxury of safety. I'm glad they have it. We didn't. We developed what worked. Would you say human combat is superior? I'd say human combat is different. It's optimized for different goals. Your species fight for art and meaning. We fight to survive. Neither is better or worse. Just different contexts. Do all humans fight this way? More or less. We've got plenty of martial arts that look pretty, but they all come from the same foundation. End the threat efficiently. Everything else is decoration. The interview became required viewing in military academies across 8 systems. Combat sports leagues went into crisis mode, attempting to determine if rules needed to be adjusted. Several species realized their entire martial traditions were based on assumptions of safety that Deathworlders did not share. And Dravek the Unbroken, now Dravek the Humbled, began learning how to fight like his planet actually wanted to kill him. 6 months later, the Academy of Applied Human Combat Methodology opened on Station Tertius 9. Dravek ran it. Jenna consulted, charging a fee that paid off her student loans and funded her retirement plan. The first class included 12 species from across the luminous spiral. They came expecting to learn brutal efficiency. What they learned was context. You're never going to fight exactly like a human, Jenna told them on the first day. Your bodies are different. Your reflexes work differently. Your species didn't evolve dodging predators while simultaneously being predators. But you can learn the mindset. You can understand why we fight the way we do. She demonstrated on a training dummy. Human combat is about tempo. You set the pace, you control the fight. If you let the other person think, they might do something smart. So you don't let them think. You hit, move, hit again, no pauses. You overwhelm their decision-making process. One student, a Corinthian with 4 arms and excellent reach, asked, "Why would we want to fight like humans when we have physical advantages?" Because we had to get creative to survive with the bodies we've got. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the toughest, but we learn to use what we have with maximum efficiency. And that efficiency translates. Dravek watched from the observation deck. He had been training in human methods for 6 months. His body would never move like Jenna's. His species' neural architecture was different. But he had learned to think like a human fighter, to see openings and exploit them immediately, to understand that combat was communication stripped of politeness. He had challenged Jenna to 3 rematches. He had lasted 8 seconds in the first, 11 seconds in the second, 9 seconds in the third. He was getting worse, which Jenna explained meant he was getting better. You're trying new things. That's good. You lose faster, but you're learning faster. The irony was not lost on him. He had wanted a real fight, something unpredictable, challenging, interesting. He had gotten exactly that, and learned that real fights, the kind where survival was at stake, ended fast precisely because anything longer was a failure. The galaxy had spent 12,000 years developing combat as performance art. Humans had spent millions of years developing combat as survival tool. Both approaches answered the same question: what do we do about violence? Galactic answer: transform it into philosophy and art. Human answer: end it as quickly as possible. Then have philosophy and art afterward, when everyone is safe. Dravek stood in his academy, watching students from a dozen species learn to punch like their lives depended on it. and felt something he had not felt in 150 years. He felt like he was learning something new. Jenna appeared beside him, eating something from a small bag. "They're doing pretty good. The Corinthian is picking it up fast. 4 arms give him combination options we don't have. He is also holding back, afraid of hurting his training partners. Yeah, we need to drill that out of him. Holding back in training just means you hold back in real situations." She offered the bag. "Want some? There are these earth snacks called chips. Terrible for you, but delicious." Dravek took one with a manipulator limb. It was indeed terrible and delicious. "Thank you for doing this. Teaching us." "No problem. It's kind of fun. And the money is great." She grinned. "Plus, I get to tell people I accidentally became a galactic martial arts consultant by punching a guy really good once." "You revolutionized combat sports across 8 systems." "I punched a guy. That's what I did. Everything else is you all realizing that maybe your approach had some blind spots. Massive, fight-losing blind spots. To be fair, your approach works great when everyone follows the same rules. It's beautiful. It's meaningful. It's just not optimized for when someone doesn't know the rules or doesn't care." Dravek watched a student successfully complete a combination strike. Fast, efficient, no wasted movement. I wanted a real fight. I got one. And it taught me that I had no idea what real fighting actually meant. Real fighting is what happens when you can't afford to lose. Everything else is sparring with extra steps. Jenna finished her chips, crumpled the bag, and tossed it into a recycling unit from 3 meters away. Perfect accuracy. But hey, at least you're not bored anymore. No, I am terrified, humbled, and learning more than I have in decades. It is wonderful. That's the human experience right there. Welcome to Deathworld thinking. Dravek's mandibles clicked in amusement. He had asked for something real. The universe, with its characteristic sense of irony, had sent him a human construction worker who had shown him exactly what real meant. Real meant fast. Real meant efficient. Real meant you ended problems before they ended you. And real meant that everything he had believed about combat had been predicated on a luxury his species had enjoyed for their entire evolution, the luxury of safety. Humans did not have that luxury, so they had developed something else. They had developed winning, and now, across the luminous spiral, species who had spent millennia treating combat as art were learning that sometimes art was less important than going home uninjured. Dravek went back to his office and updated his personal log. Day 183 of training in human combat methodology. Lost 3rd rematch with Jenna in 9 seconds. Improvement noted. Lasted 3 seconds longer than first match before being submitted. She says this is progress. I choose to believe her. Pride demands it. The Academy is succeeding beyond projections. Students from 17 species now, all learning the same lesson I learned, that combat means different things to different species, and assuming your context is universal is a great way to get knocked unconscious in 6 seconds. I no longer find combat boring. I find it terrifying, challenging, and absolutely engaging. Jenna says this means I am finally understanding what real fighting feels like. I think I prefer it to philosophy. Philosophy you can do while comfortable. Real fighting requires you to be present, immediate, and very, very fast. Next goal? Last 15 seconds in the rematch. Jenna says if I last 20, she will consider me competent. He closed the log and looked out at the training floor where beings from across the galaxy were learning to punch like their planets had tried to kill them.